name is Megan from Bath Garden Center. Today's video is going to be about planting dahlia bulbs. One thing to note about dahlia bulbs is they're not technically a bulb. They're called a tuber, which means that they hold their nutrients in their stems and their roots rather than bulbs hold it internally like in their foliage. The tubers do retain some more moisture, which makes them more susceptible to freezing and colder temperatures. Dahlias do not tolerate any kind of cold temperature, so it's important to plant your tubers after our average last frost date, which is around May 9th for Colorado here. But just pay attention to your location. Those average last frost dates are really important to keep in mind when planting dahlia bulbs and bulbs that don't tolerate cold weather. If you can't wait to plant your dahlia tubers, you can plant them around 2.5 to 3 weeks earlier indoors in a container. That protects them from the cold temperatures outside, so they'll thrive inside. As far as planting them in containers, you're gonna usually want to do 1 tuber to 1 gallon container. The reason why you're gonna want to plant just a single tuber, dahlias get really big, they vary in different sizes, their blooms are huge. You really want to give them a lot of space to thrive and get really big. So yeah, this is a good size to start for just like one of these little guys. You want to first add a layer of soil, so not too much. You're gonna want to do like a couple inches, about here would be okay. You fill that up with your bulb soil or your regular all potting soil, whatever you have. And then after that, you're gonna kind of till in a little bit of your bone meal, a little bit of a fertilizer into that. Then you're gonna just plant your tuber into the soil. It doesn't really super matter what direction you plant up. If you don't know, planting on its side is the best rule of thumb. So you can just sit that on top of there. You're gonna add more soil as much as you need. When you first prepare your space for your bulb, you want to dampen that soil a little bit. As far as the difference between containers and doing it outside, it's going to need the same kind of thing where you're going to want a damper soil. You're not going to want to water it as soon as it's been planted. You're not going to water it from the top. You're going to let it just do its thing until you start seeing sprouts, and then as soon as the sprouts come up, you're going to water it differently. For indoor container gardening for these tubers and for outdoors, they're going to need the same thing. As far as when you first get that soil prepared, you're going to want to dampen it just a little bit to give it some moisture, but you're not going to want to add any more moisture to the soil after you've added the rest of the soil to the top of it. That's a really important key factor for the growth of the dahlia, and you don't want to start watering regularly until after you see a sprouts. So 2 bulb fertilizers, we've got bone meal, and then we've just got your typical bulb tone, a bulb fertilizer. For container gardening and for outdoor gardening, you're going to want to do that first layer of soil, the initial first layer, and then the appropriate ratio for your bulbs on top of that, and kind of mix that in. Then you want to set your bulb on top, then you want to have that moistened soil again up at the top of it. This is going to be more used for established plants. You're going to want to wait till your dahlia reaches about 6 inches in height, and then that's a good rule of thumb to start fertilizing every month after that into the summertime. So as soon as your dahlias have sprouted, you really need to provide them with at least 6 to 8 hours of bright or partial sunlight. They really need a lot of sunlight to keep thriving. The more sunlight you give it, if you're doing that 6 to 8 hour requirement, the more it's going to tend to bloom, and it'll just create more and more blooms. So if you want a really successful and thriving dahlia, make sure you're giving it direct sunlight or partial sunlight, but for a long time of the day. So once it sprouts in your container, you can actually take it outside. So you have this pot, and you can actually just take your whole plant out and stick it in a hole outside. That's totally fine. It's going to be a little different than just putting your tuber directly outside. You want to make your hole just a little bit bigger than what you are taking out. So if more soil falls out and it's more of your bulb that's kind of left, Just do about 3 times in diameter than the size of that, and that's just a good rule of thumb for planting this. You do want to put it on top of some slightly dampened soil. You want to amend that soil with a compost or something, sand, to kind of help break up the clay soil and give it that extra light fluffiness to kind of establish its roots better. We just have such clay-like soil here. It's super important that you are tilling the soil and giving it a nice area to establish its root system from inside to outside. So after it does sprout, you want to give it a little bit of water. That's when you're going to start watering stuff. Once you put it outside, you want to water it every 2 weeks. A lot of times dahlias die because they're overwatered, so let them dry out a little bit and then wait for another 2 weeks to apply some more water. So you want to really pay attention to the instructions on the back of your bulb bags. However you get it, you want to pay attention to what it says. Each dahlia is going to have a different requirement. Some of them get only like 2 inches blooms, and some of them get huge giant blooms, or they're smaller bulbs, tubers, and bigger tubers. That's all going to vary for the depth that you're going to want to create for your tuber. So pay attention to that. For ours, we wanted to do about 6 to 12 inches deep. This specific dahlia is the Garden Wonder decorative dahlia, so that's going to be the requirement for this specific dahlia. But pay attention to your instructions, as they are going to have different needs and spacing and depth requirements. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and let us know if you have any questions.